World Regions Geography, Chapter 6, the United States and Canada, Part 1. So the first thing we're going to cover is the learning outcomes. So we're going to describe the distinctive landscapes of the United States and Canada with respect to landforms and climate. Second, we're going to explain how the United States and Canada are affecting and affected by global climate change. We want to understand the rise of the United States and Canada as key forces in the global economy. We want to describe how the two countries' dynamic economies contribute to and shape the global economy. And we want to summarize the economic inequality that exists in both the United States and Canada. We want to compare and contrast the forms and practice of government of the United States and Canada. We want to summarize the indigenous and immigrant histories of the United States and Canada. And we want to describe the fundamentals of the geography of religion and language across the United States and Canada. And compare and contrast the urbanization processes that have shaped the United States and Canada. So you're going to start with the United States and Canada, and what we're really talking about is all of this region right there. So this includes Greenland, Alaska, Canada, United States. Now, this part, some people would include Mexico as part of North America, but culturally it's more attached to South America. And we're also including Hawaii in this United States and North America. So we're excluding Mexico, which could be argued is geographically part of North America, but culturally is more tied to Latin America. So the area is a highly developed region. The largest economy in the world is right here. This region right through here is one of the most highly industrialized. Human adaptation to the environment. You have everything from Arctic to subtropical to desert, forest, plains, mountains. So you have a tremendous amount of adaptation and variability from coast to coast and top to bottom. Nearly every climate pattern is represented in North America. So you have the Arctic North, this region up here. You have Southeast United States, this region here. This is tropical, subtropical, very humid, typically hot summers, cool winters. You don't see that much snow, though you do get snow down in this region. I mean, sometimes it stretches down into Florida, but it's rare. Precipitation gradient, huge variance, very wet here, very dry over here. The jet streams in winter. Now, the jet stream, for you, those that may not be aware, comes from over here, flows down, and then rips across here. And it's real high altitude. And what it does is brings a lot of moisture and clouds. Now, depending on how far down the jet stream dips, often determines how much rain we get, how much moisture we get. And when the jet stream comes down here, if it goes across here, that creates a drought in this region also. So it can affect this whole western United States. It doesn't only affect just this very Pacific edge. It actually dictates weather in this region also. So if the jet stream comes, as it sometimes does, and dips down here before turning west, where it comes across here around Northern California, typically we're going to have an extremely wet year. They'll have a tremendous amount of snow in this region, and you'll have a wet year across here. Lake effect snows. Now, in California, we don't really get lake effect snow. Lake effect snow primarily refers to the Great Lakes regions. And what it is during the winter, winds coming down here from this continental air mass come down, and they come from the west and blow this direction across the lakes. And what they do, as this warm water comes over the land, it picks up moisture when it crosses the lakes here. It picks up moisture. And everywhere along the western edge of the lakes get lake effect snow. So if you're asking yourself, why does Buffalo, New York have so much snow? It's because of lake effect. The winds come, they pick up a lot of moisture. As soon as they cross the land, they drop that moisture. And so you have the lake effect snow. Environmental modifications. So we have a tremendous amount of resource wealth. We have the technological capability to exploit the wealth. Other places have a lot of resource wealth, such as Siberia, but there's not the technology and the ability to exploit it that we have in the United States and Canada, North American economies. And it's because of our rail system, it's because of the ability to have the equipment get into regions that otherwise may not be accessible, that mean that we can exploit that wealth. Environmental impacts. So global climate change. What are we really talking about? If you look here, this is a map actually of temperatures. And this is what we're anticipating the temperatures doing and where the dry areas are. Now, this is precipitation down here. So seasonally, this is the increases in temperatures that we're anticipating from global warming. So you notice this red, which is the high increase. Most of the increase in temperatures is in the far north. If you look here at California, it's really not, it's a small increase, but nothing compared to what's going on up here. And it's actually greater in the winter. So kind of think about that a little bit. I want you to think about it. Why do you think it would be greater in the winter? We actually have less impact here. So there's less change in the winter temperature, more change in the annual overall that we're seeing here in California. Moisture-wise, if you see here, here's the annual overall. This is a drought. It's dry air here. More and more precipitation as you move farther north. During winter, comes down. During summer, have severe drought. This is what causes our forest fires when we have drought. This is really caused by a high pressure system that kind of parks itself over here during this time of year. Greenhouse gases, important factor, and that comes from carbon fuel emissions. Large carbon footprint. The United States and Canada, for the amount of people in the population, have a much larger carbon footprint in the global environment than just about anywhere on the planet. There's a lot of interesting things geologically about North America. The Canadian Shield. The Canadian Shield is this region right up in here, and it's really some of the oldest rocks on the planet. So in other words, some of the first land ever is part of the Canadian Shield. Interior lowlands, this region here. If you look where you have the Rocky Mountains along here and the Appalachians here, this all drains this direction, this all drains this direction, and then it all drains down here into the Gulf. So this is a big sloping. If you've ever been out here, you know, they say the Great Plains, it's real flat. But actually, if you go from like here and you go up here towards Denver, you're continually going uphill. It appears flat, but it actually goes from, a few hundred feet in elevation to thousands of feet in elevation. But it's just a steady climb. And that's what makes this region drain. And this big river, the Mississippi-Missouri River, that stretches clear up here and basically drains most of the continent. The Appalachian Mountains here on the East Coast, those are some of the oldest mountains in all of the East Coast, or all of North America. This Ozark Plateau right here is another small mountain range. Most of the mountains here are 2,000 to 3,000 feet tall, not really much higher than that. Pretty low area. And then you have the Rocky Mountains, which stretch way up into here. These mountains here are some of the newer mountains, and that stretches up through the backbone. And if this is where the Continental Divide is, and if you're on the eastern side, then the water drains this way into the Atlantic, eventually the Gulf, and then into the Atlantic. If you're on the western side, then everything drains into the Pacific. So it's this divide that runs up here, and sometimes in this region right here, it cuts back and forth across itself. The newest mountain range is this range that runs up here, the Sierra Nevada, and then the Cascade Range up into the Alaskan mountains up here. These are all fairly new. The Sierra Nevada still growing. This region in here is the Intermountain region, heavily impacted by orographic effect, which means that the winds blow here and they bring the moisture, and they drop the moisture on the western slope of these mountains, and the eastern slope doesn't get nearly as much moisture. Consequently, this region here is very desert. Now you do get tropical air mass that comes up out of this region here during the summer and brings moisture into Phoenix. So if you've ever been in Phoenix in the summer, you know there can be thunderstorms and things, and that's because of this tropical air mass. Rivers and lake system, extensive rivers, navigable rivers throughout North America, navigable lakes in this region. These lakes here, basically it's almost halfway through the continent, drains out here and into this right here. Now it hasn't always been that way. The thing about this region, this was all covered by ice until during the last ice age, and actually came down into this region right here along the Missouri, and the remnants of that are this. Now up until the ice receded out of this region, these lakes here drained into the Mississippi. But when the ice glacier melted here in the St. Lawrence Valley, then they began draining this direction into the Atlantic. There's a tremendous amount of energy and mineral resources. The top producers of natural gas are in Canada. Substantial coal and oil reserves throughout Canada and the United States, along with a tremendous amount of renewable resources in the form of hydroelectric power, wind energy, solar power options. So all of those types of things are existing right now.